Feels good to be back, Joe.
With you.
Hey. Good to see you.
I love it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man.
No, absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Sorry, it's just
about that.
to tell you the truth,
We're
it's
just gonna lay it
natural.
down.
I mean, like
You can't use anything like this on a headphone?
We probably could, like I said, but I don't. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to tinker around with it for an hour. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like it has to be up. It's going to pick us up anyways.
What a name that is.
That's fine.
Here, lay on that little.
And you got SD card or anything?
Shit. Ken didn't bring it. Can you just record in the show somehow?
I don't have SD.
I mean, just like Vox or something? Can
I
you?
use it for music.
Will there be, like an archive?
Yeah, you can get one.
Okay.
You have to talk to
Yeah.
Paul or Mark.
Cool.
We're home for news and insider info on your Vegas Golden Knights and the NHL. Let's hear from your captains, Jason Pothier and Ken Volke.
Hello, hello. Only one hello is actually here today. Jason Pothier, SinBin.Vegas. Ken Volke is on the road. He went to Anaheim last night to watch Vegas beat the Ducks 3-0. Filling in for Ken is the Sports Adrenaline guys, Mark
Stone?
McIntyre.
What? Mark Stone's
Hey,
here?
that's what it is.
Yeah.
McIntyre and John Castanino. John, Matt.
Thanks for having us, brother.
Absolutely.
Excited to be here.
What is going on? You guys are filling in, and I keep getting texts that Ken is at breakfast. This must be some breakfast.
I just assumed Ken was at Disneyland. That's why I'm rocking the
And I'm
Mickey
wearing
Mouse
mine
today.
as well.
Because he's in Anaheim
Yeah,
hanging out with
I don't
the
know
family.
what's
So
going on with you two, but I wore my Knights gear today.
Well,
very much.
And that's a
Exactly.
nice looking shirt.
You
So
might be having a character breakfast, you think?
Oh,
You know,
I'm jealous of Ken
I can
right
see
now.
that.
Bell.
yeah,
jealous.
with Bell
Mickey
and
and
I mean, Ken's a big, tall, bald guy, so maybe he's hanging
Goofy.
out with
He's goofy. Come on.
Donald, Goofy. Who else is bald?
We got to
Either
throw
way.
Ken into the goofy category. He's tall enough.
So speaking of Goofy in Anaheim, last night it was, pretty much what we expected. I think we thought that it was going to be a clear victory for the Golden Knights. Really, they had to get that win. And I'm not saying they needed the win when it comes to Arizona being close. I'm just saying these are the type of games that you got to start winning. So last night they go in, win 3-0. I would say overall it was a pretty good performance. Maybe 45 minutes of good hockey. There was some sloppy moments. We'll get into that, specifically the start of the second period. But overall, what did you guys think of last night's game?
Well, me and John were talking about it in the press box the other night. Had they gone on to win that game, was it going to be they're back on the right track, right? And I said, one game's not going to do it. That was their second win in a row, so that was nice. Now you got 3 wins in a row. So I think what you're seeing now is a team that's starting to build confidence back up a little bit. Mark Stone clearly making a difference in there. I mean, this guy, we focused in on him for a little while watching that game the other night. Just when he was on the ice, watching his shift. And that guy is solid.
Yeah,
man. He is fun to watch.
The points will come.
Yeah, and it's changed the team. You can see that they're playing with a little more jump. They have a little more confidence in their game now, and it's starting to reflect in the scoreboard.
Well, I'll take it a step further, and I'll just say the slump's over.
Yeah.
You've got 3 straight wins now in the bank. Mark Stone on the team, 3-0 with him on the team. Tuck scores, Carlson scores, the game before Riley Smith scores. Flower
Already
with a
before
shutout.
that.
He had a little bit of rest in him, so that's just my big takeaway here, is that this team, now it's starting its ramp back up before we get ready for the postseason here. 17 games left, 16 games left at this point. I think that's a good amount of time here to where they go on a nice little stretch, 10-5. 11-5, and they're on the upward swing. And Matt and I had talked about this about a month ago, right, going into the All-Star break. If they were going to have a lull, that was the perfect time to have a little dip, and now they're on their way back up.
Yeah, for sure. And like you guys said, I mean, the confidence that Mark Stone has added to this team. I mean, Riley Smith the other day breaks out. I mean, if there's one guy that needed to get on the board, it was Riley Smith. He does it twice the other night. If there's another guy that needs to get on the board, it's William Karlsson. He does last night. And if there's a third guy that needs to get on the board, Alex Tuck, and he does last night. So let's talk about those 2 players. I was a little nervous, a little concerned about their body language after the Mark Stone trade, not because I thought that that their minutes would be taken away, but William Karlsson is clearly, one of the bigger faces in town. He's not being paid for an extended period of time like most of the people on the team are, like most of the players are. He wants a deal they're working on. They've been negotiating. I don't think it's, as of what we know, we don't really have any inclination that it's going to be signed soon. So I'm sure in his mind he's sitting there thinking, well, they just offered $9.5 million to a guy who's never played here before. Clearly he's worth it, but what am I worth to them? So now I started to think maybe he was a little, just not fully happy with the situation. I could be way off. That was just my first initial kind of reaction. Alex Tuck, the first game I saw him on the third line, I didn't like his body language. Second game, I didn't like his body language. Last night, I thought he woke up, and I thought that line altogether was really good. I actually like Carpenter being back in the lineup helping Tuck as well. So, what do you guys think? I mean, his confidence, is that what it was?
Well, I mean, when you look at Karlsson's situation, maybe he wasn't happy about it even before the trade here. So maybe, you combine, again, a little bit of lack of scoring with the scenario already previous to Mark Stone coming in that contract.
Yeah.
I think he could have been, salty may not be the right word, but maybe he wasn't the happiest camper to start.
Well, maybe Karlsson's looking at it saying, at 40-plus goals a season, I'm an $8.5 to $9 million guy. But I'm not a 40-plus goal-a-year season, and perhaps that reality started to set in. Now, Karlsson is going to be a 20-plus goal-a-season guy, I think.
He's at, 19
he's
or
at 19
20 right now?
He's at 19 right now. Like John said, 17 games to go. He's going to eclipse 20, maybe even 25 goals again this season. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, and that's what you want from that guy. I mean, he's not 40 goals a year is ridiculous. You're not going to get that out of most people every single season. But
you get maybe like 5 guys a year that reach it,
And Karlsson at 25 goals a year is still going to be in that $5 to $6.5 million a year range.
Too low, though.
It depends. Now, for him, coming out of last season, too low. But coming out of this season, now you got to start looking at your averages.
And I think that's what the Golden Knights are doing. They're looking at it, kind of projecting, listen, this guy's not going to be a 43-goal scorer every year. So we have to pay him as if he's a 20 or 25 goal scorer a year. However, he's a really good center, a really good 200-foot player, so that adds value as well. Personally, I would look to give him around 6.5, 7. But
you'd go size 7.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
But again, I'm not a general manager, so it does sound like I could be overpaying him a bit. But, the tone is sort of set when you pay a guy $9.5 million.
Well, you got to look at the guy, though, and then you got to look at the guys on the team that are getting around that 5 to 5.5.
Yeah.
He's got to get a little more than that, but he can't get as much as a Mark Stone.
No.
He's just not that player. So, 6.5, 7 maybe, but I think that 6.5 is good.
His value to me is just as much, or can be as much, as what Pacioretty could be. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys, they start to ramp up their confidence. The second line's starting to look good. John, in your eyes, when you see those 3 out there, you see Stone banging bodies, you see Pacioretty getting open. I mean, is this not a great formula for success in the playoffs?
Well, it's clear. It's obvious to anybody listening to this that the second line is the best line on this team. Now, it's can you get the top 3 rolling? So if this is the start, right, with Smith's 2 goals and Karlsson's goal last night, you have your top 6 rolling. You kind of know what the third line's going to do, and that is I like seeing Brandon Peary on that third line with Tuck right now, and if that can get started, fourth line is the most consistent line on this team by far, but that top 6, you get all of those guys rolling, that's a winning formula in the postseason, I would think, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anytime you can have 2 strong lines, and then add Tuck in. Now, the question is, will he go Peary, Nosek, Carpenter in the postseason? But that's kind of, small potatoes when you're considering that this team, they have a lot of offense, but they're still not scoring the goals. Keep in mind, they only had 2 goals last night, a third with an empty net.
Gibson finally had a decent game against the Golden
They
Knights.
did. He did play well, but they'd been playing well against decent goaltending the other night. Well, I'll put aside Roberto Luongo, but the game before that, Ben Bishop was very good. So they still aren't scoring more than 2 goals a game. And I know people are going to yell at me about Dallas, and I push away the Florida game because that was just a track meet. But the Dallas game, they had 2 empty net goals. So I'm still concerned that they're not scoring more than 2 goals a game.
Well, I think they're just going to get better, though. This is just the start of them breaking out of this slump, right? So Stone's still getting in the mix, and he said last night he loves playing in this offense, or essentially this style, which is completely different than what he was doing at Ottawa. He said that was a very technical game plan, very technical was the exact word, where he said, here in Vegas, it's go, go, go. And he's not used to that, but he loves it. And that's what he told Gary Lawless yesterday. So my point is, everything's going to get better, I think, from here on. So I think you're just going to see an increase in scoring. I don't see it. I don't see it going backwards here. No. They've hit their low point. I think we're accelerating it.
It also, the Mark Stone addition really balances this team out a bit, and it puts other teams on their heels quite a bit more, because now you have to deal with a top line that's maybe starting to find their way a little bit. I mean, you saw that stretch pass that March still gave to Tuck yesterday. I mean, just head up, looking down the ice, looking to make a play. That's a confidence play, like right there. That's knowing what you can do on the ice, seeing a guy take off and hitting that pass.
And just imagine Tuck getting that pass in. Yeah. Wow. Look at this guy who can hit me.
Exactly. Yeah. And then again, Riley Smith scoring goals finally. Carlson breaks through last night. If that top line starts to get going, everybody in the league knows what that top line can do, what they did last year. You add to that Stastny line with Pacioretty and Stone. That's a scary line to see come off the bench every time. Then you have Tuck coming out on that third line with Eakin. I think those two have really good chemistry, and they're going to get better as the rest of the season progresses. And then you've got the Bruiser line coming in on the back end, that fourth line, especially if you get Carrier back. I think you put teams on the defensive a lot more now with the balance that you have across the board.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing, I just, like John said, I love that fourth line, the way it plays together, the way they grind, the way they push the puck.
Most consistent team in line in franchise history.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, in franchise history, that's for the best.
Because they just go out and do their job. That's a workhorse line, right?
I never thought of that. I mean, over the past season and 3/4, they've been consistent, and for the most part, it's been Belly who's been the constant. But overall, Reeves has fit in well, and he hasn't given up his seat for
everyday player now.
Yeah. So you're right. If Carrier comes back, will they decide to go with him instead of a Nosek or whatever? But we'll see. I mean, that those are good problems to have. The one problem I think you do need to be concerned about is Pirri, because I don't know if his confidence is one of the issues that I've worried for about a month now.
He's lightning in a bottle, right? I mean, you
just have to
catch him in the right time. If he gets into a groove, maybe you get 3, 4, 5 goals out of him in a few game stretch.
But can you rely on it, especially in the playoffs?
That's the thing, is you have to hope you can find him in the right time. And he seems to be better with.
Well, who do you want in the lineup? Do you want him? Do you want? Because personally, I'd always been kind of rough on Ryan Carpenter because he doesn't score much, and he hasn't scored much since I believe it was the San Jose series. But more importantly, the one thing about Ryan Carpenter is he's just a gallant guy, and he does everything right. And I'm starting to notice that over the season, and I think it's really tough to pull him out. So the question is, will they go for a kind of a defensive more lineup on the depth guys in the bottom six with Nosek and Carpenter, or will they add Pirri? And that's a question going down the line there before the playoffs.
So I'm looking at Pirri's numbers here, right? 2 goals in the month of February, and this was a bad stretch for the Golden Knights. At least in the games that he played in, they only have 2 wins. So 2 goals. Again, we say lightning in a bottle, but I think he needs to be in the lineup.
I'd like to see Nosek on that third line. Carrier back on the fourth. Nosek. I mean,
he's a grinder. I love the way he plays.
And he's got size. And you put him on that third line with Tuck, who has size, and Eakin with his ability to control the puck. And I think you can catch something there.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're here with the Sports Adrenaline guys, filling in for Ken Bulkey, who
takes 2 of us to fill in for Ken.
Yeah, it does. That big mouth, of course. So he's on his way back from Anaheim. But this is SinBin Radio. We'll be back right after this. Sorry, I thought you were playing it. You played even earlier. Oh, so I can hear it. Yeah. No, you're good, man. I trust you. Whenever you need me, I'm with you. I have a question. How come you don't hear Carlson's name as much this year as he did last year?
Right, because he doesn't have 43 goals. I mean, he seemed to score every other, if not every game last season. That's what it felt like. I mean, yeah, he was incredible last year. And here's the thing: is everybody looks, and you know this as well as anybody. Everybody looks at the stat sheet and goes, "He didn't score. He didn't do anything." he does so many other things well throughout the course of a game. Yeah, but if you're not scoring goals, people are like, well, you're not worth anything. I agree. I agree.
And I don't think they're going to pay him.
I love it. It's just like you just don't hear him.
No, and the thing is, though, he's such a quality guy, too.
He's scoring with the Fergies is what he's doing.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
but I noticed this the other night. How many one-timers has he even attempted this season compared to? I mean, he scored at least a dozen goals last year on one-timers. I don't think he even had 2 or 3 this season.
Well, his goal percentage last year,
Right, that's right.
conversion percentage was insane.
But I mean, again, those were off a lot of them were off one-timers where they just, you just slap it right in. So
He's not going to get 8.5 to 9. He's not. I don't know that he's going to get that from anybody.
I think he could get 7 from somebody outside of this market. And
7,
if I'm him, I'm going. Don't.
maybe. Yeah.
I mean,
He needs, but again, if you're looking at 6 to 7 in that range, he's going to have to weigh out a lot more than just the extra million.
yeah, but it's the value of you know. Vegas Golden Knights went 3-0 last night in Anaheim. Jason Pothier filling in for the Big Mouth Ken Bulkey. This is the Sports Journaling guys. You know them, John and Matt. So,
Is it a
guys,
little quieter in here without Ken in this? I mean,
a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious.
A little calmer, a little. I'm not getting as mad.
Espresso hasn't set in yet on my end, so don't worry. We'll get loud.
Yeah,
We'll get loud.
But the obviously, I think most people are just happy that they didn't play their best over the past few games, but they won those games, right? So they get those 6 points in the past 3 games. They beat Dallas. Kind of a weird game there because Ben Bishop is just playing incredibly well until he makes a major mistake and the game's over at that point. Florida, let's be honest, that game, Vegas kind of got lucky. They really probably should have never pulled that out. I mean, down 3-1. They really didn't have anything going. But, again, they pushed, and Riley Smith cracks one through. And then, they just kind of pressure Luongo and Florida, so they get that one as well. So obviously, Shea Theodore with a beautiful backhand shootout goal. Last night, I think, was the game that we all needed to see. The back-to-back kind of, or a game after a win that's a positive win. I think we can take, like I said, 45 minutes I think we can take out of last night and say it was a strong 45-minute game.
I think...
And I could be maybe, being a little bit too critical, but that the first 10 minutes of that second period we'll get into was lousy.
I think a game like the Florida game, and I asked Galan about it after the game. These are the types of games that they were typically losing in the last month, right? These are the games where it seemed like they really had it and they were going to go on to a victory, and then they'd lose in the shootout, or they'd lose it in overtime, or they'd lose it in the last 5 minutes of the third.
It's kind of
and they couldn't get over the hump. Yeah, and it felt like it was going that way, but it didn't. They got that win, and that's the kind of game that you go, all right, we couldn't get this before. Now we're finding a way to win it. Now you string 3 wins in a row together. You have Vancouver coming in tomorrow. I mean, let's be honest, that should be a 4th win in a row.
It should be.
And then the big one on Wednesday against Calgary, who's, one of the top teams in the West, obviously the top team in the Pacific. You're going to be up for that game. It's going to be 18,000 plus in the arena.
Can't wait for that game.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have a blast at that game. And I think this is a stretch here where if they can rattle off 5 wins in a row, you're going to see this team turn and start to play like we know they can.
And you can easily make the argument. You talk about the 3-game stretch here. They played better in each game. You could look at aspects that maybe weren't better in that Florida game, but they've, again, as I said in the first segment, they're getting better, and they're winning while they're getting better as well. So I just, unless they have a huge regression, I want to talk about Malcolm Subban for a bit.
Yeah, okay.
And I'd love to
get
your thoughts on this because, not the best game from him, but it's a game that the team won, which hasn't been normal this season at all.
Just get Subban to a shootout and we're fine. That's all you
right.
got to worry about.
Right?
Get him to a shootout.
Goal in a shootout, 16 for 16 on saves, which is unbelievable. But you look at Marc-Andre Fleury last night after 1 extra day of rest. It's just when can you fit in Malcolm Subban? I think he needs to get as many starts as possible.
Well, you can't get him Calgary. You can't give him that game. So maybe you consider tomorrow. The only thing is. Fleury's a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of taking Fleury out of a situation where he's won a game beforehand. I like to get a goaltender on a streak, especially one that, I won't lie to you, I'd like to get him some Vezina votes. So, and I'm not saying wear him down, but I think there's an opportunity because the game is Sunday and then Wednesday. There's 2 days there he can get a break. So I would go Fleury Sunday.
Sunday,
Wednesday, rest him. Now, keep in mind, I believe it's March. Do you guys have the schedule? March 10th to March 15th. There's like a mini break there.
Yep, 5 days. Yeah.
So I mean,
10 to the 15th.
You know,
For
the people that are concerned about Fleury's rest, I mean, look at these breaks, and even over March, it's not. You don't have many back-to-backs. I think you have one. And for the most part, a 5-day break in the middle of March at the end of the season, it's pretty good. So I think that could help Fleury as well.
What you have to remember, and if you go look at games played this season, the Golden Knights have been one of the top teams in the league as far as number of games played all year. They played such a heavy schedule earlier in the season, and now with a month to go, it kind of tapers off a little bit, and other teams are going to catch up as far as games played. So they had their big bulk early on. Now they get the opportunity to rest a little more than other teams.
And I would think that was probably their game plan. You know, knowing that they had a front-loaded schedule. Why not run out Fleury for those games? And John, going back to Subban, one thing that, and you guys were there because I was still over in Florida's locker room, but Gallant never really calls out players, and he never calls out a goaltender. But he did mention a couple of times that he thought Malcolm should have stopped a couple of pucks against Florida.
Specifically on the power play.
Yeah, well, what did you guys take away from that? Was that a message? Was that a Gallant kind of a little ticked? Or was that just Gallant being honest?
To be honest with you, because Gallant does it so rarely, I can't still get a good gauge as to why he mentions a player in a post-game press conference. And we mentioned it after one of the losses where Riley Smith takes a penalty 200 feet away, right? At the close of the second period. That was the Jets game, I think.
He called out the play. He never called out the player's name.
Right.
But we all knew.
Yeah, it's pretty specific, though.
I mean, and so to me, this could be it's a pretty wide range with Gerard Gallant. Either he doesn't care and he's going to mention it, or he cares and he's very methodical and pointed at it. I think it fits anywhere into the spectrum there. But with Subban, I think it might be pointed at him a little bit because they need him to play a little bit better. Because as I said, I think you try to fit in as many starts from Malcolm Subban as logistically or smartly as possible.
Right.
Here. They need him to play because last year when they put him in net, they had a great chance to win a game. This year you put him in net and it's not, the confidence isn't there.
I think that maybe you want Subban to take a little bit of that accountability. I mean, it's so often this season, and even me and John have talked about it. It feels like the defense is really letting Subban down, and that's kind of the talking point with fans out there and social media is, the defense is letting Subban down. This isn't his fault. This isn't his fault. And if you start to hear that a lot as a goalie, maybe you start to sit back in your heels and go, here we go again, the defense is letting me down.
Yeah,
and you're not as sharp as maybe you should be. Now Gallant comes out and goes, hey, listen, those power play goals, maybe Subban should have been a little more ready. Maybe he should have gotten around that screen and saw the puck coming. He needs to be more accountable and make the stop. Maybe just trying to get in his head a little bit and go, come on. We know you can do this. Step up a little bit.
It's a good point because honestly, when I watched those goals, my first reaction is, how the heck is he supposed to stop that? He's being screened. And when you mentioned that maybe he should look around and find those screens, we saw Gibson do it a couple of times last night. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's a much more elite, goaltender. Fleury can do it as well, much better than Subban. But maybe that's something that Gallant was sort of aiming to is hey Malcolm, we need you to be better, especially in the power play. But he is very good when it came to shootouts, so he won that game.
There's nobody screening him.
But the one thing about it is if they lose that game, I think it's a little bit of a different narrative. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad last night they came out, had that strong, game. I know it's Anaheim, and they're not the same team at all. Even Getzlaf was not on the ice last night, so you didn't have your best player.
No, but they swept Anaheim this year. So
yeah, and
even when Anaheim was playing well, the Knights came out and beat them.
Well, I wouldn't even consider them ever playing well. But
at the beginning of the season, they were a lot stronger than they are now.
So last night, Winnipeg and Nashville play, and these two teams added players just like Vegas did. Winnipeg added Kevin Hayes, and Nashville added, a group of players. They added Brian Boyle a week before, they added Wayne Simmons, and they added Michael Granlund. And last night was a fantastic game. It was a playoff type game. 2-0, up 2-0 when Nashville. Winnipeg comes back and scores 4 straight. So you got to they score 4 straight and then a 6-on-5. Predators putting a goal. It's 4-3, a little bit closer than it seems, but for the most part, it was a incredible game. Those two teams are the teams that I think Vegas really has. That's when you got to start to worry, I think, because I think we all agree, and I think in this town that Vegas can beat San Jose in Calgary in a first round series.
Yeah.
Right.
The question is, the third round series, the conference final.
Well, that was the scary one last season, if you remember. Even us on the show talked about it before the playoffs started. Yeah, they should beat the Kings. Most likely we'll beat the Sharks, but then it's either Winnipeg or it's Nashville, and that's going to be the tough one. That's probably where the dream season ends.
Yeah.
And they lose game 1, and they don't look back against Winnipeg, and they ran right through them. And I think you have the same type of scenario this season. Not as many points on the board for the Golden Knights right now, but I think we can all agree this is probably a more talented roster top to bottom. And if they get hot, there's no reason to suggest they can't go in and beat one of those teams. But that, I think, is going to be the absolute toughest series for them this season.
Well, and if this team makes it to that point, I'd call it, again, another fantastic year.
Yeah.
Another fantastic year.
Listen, they won one series because they're the 3 seed this year. It's a little different, you know? Let's be honest, okay? An expansion team, they make the playoffs. If they got swept by the Kings, it would look bad. But realistically, nobody would have cared, right?
No.
This year, if they get swept in the first round, we care.
Right.
Okay. This is where if they lose in the first round in the 7-game series against Calgary or San Jose, we're satisfied. We're not happy, but we still think it's a successful year. If they make it to the conference finals, you're talking about a really elite program here. That's
an historic run, considering that this is their first 2 years of all time.
Yeah, and again, John, they're playing Winnipeg and Nashville. It's not like they're playing, the Ottawa Senators or the Florida Panthers.
Right. Vegas is so spoiled right now.
God,
guys
man.
Listening, you are so freaking spoiled with this hockey team. You need to have some perspective.
With sports in general now.
That as well.
Oh, you're a Cubs fan.
This doesn't, right.
You're a Dodgers fan.
I certainly have seen the bad side. That's for sure. But no, Vegas, this is a special team. And again, you talk about a signing with Stone for 8 years, Pacioretty for the next 4, right? Stastny for the next couple. I mean, we're going to have an elite NHL hockey team in Vegas, and what city can say Atlanta certainly can't say that.
Nope.
I mean, so again, have a little perspective here when you start to call out these guys. And again, a sweep in the first round would be, it would look bad, right, this season. But again, look at it from macro here. It's a second-year franchise, and already you're talking about consistently this team trying to make a Stanley Cup run.
And not to mention, it's not that their window ended this year either.
No. Right.
So when the playoffs end, if it's them hoisting the Stanley Cup or losing in some round, for the most part, we're still going to be happy in knowing because they have Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, Alex Tuch, William Karlsson, go down the line. They have these guys locked up for a while. So
top 5 NHL franchise, man.
All right, the Sports Adrenaline guys, John and Matt, filling in for the big Ken Bulkey. We'll be right back. This is SinBin Radio.
Half an hour left.
Everything's too positive.
Yeah, I know, right? You can go negative.
I love this. Is this where the money went to?
Yeah,
Clearly.
I'm using it as
My paycheck right there.
I mean, the sweater drive, it happened over a month ago. It's like his little bedroom, you know?
Yeah.
Did you see the little tip of the cap as he walked out?
No, I didn't see it.
You saw me literally walk like face to face. I just
Yeah.
Me too. I walked right by. So
These
the
guys
10
had-
a.m. Or the 8 a.m.
New
show,
guy.
8 a.m. show is Sports Adrenaline. 8 to 10 Sports
Well, I
Adrenaline.
remember you guys were,
Yeah. He decided he doesn't need us anymore, and said don't bother coming in because Saturday Sports Beat.
What?
Yeah.
See,
He got this time slot with Sports Adrenaline.
No, I
that was
remember
the
these
pitch.
guys were
Yeah,
with him.
that was the pitch. But he's too big for us now.
for me, Ken's out, so I needed a fill-in, and I'm like, I know exactly who I'm calling.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
The SinBin on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Jason Pothier, SinBin.Vegas, filling in for Ken Bolke as the Sports Adrenaline guys. John and Matt. John, let's start with this, because I bugged Matt at like 1 a.m. last night. All right,
I was asleep.
So
I was up. Don't worry, I was
so you
up.
might be a little bit more wide awake than us. But last night I didn't. I keep mentioning 45 minutes of good play because the start of the second period to me, and it continues to be a problem, is it was slow. It was a slow start. They got their first quality shot. Let's see here. I have it somewhere. They got their first quality shot 13 minutes into the first period.
Wow.
Mark Stone on a rebound off of
First or
Brady
second
McNabb.
period?
Second period. It was a rebound, Mark Stone off of a Brady McNabb slap shot. They allowed Anaheim to have 6 quality shots in the first 10 minutes. John Gibson barely saw the puck, and for the most part, it seemed like they just allowed Anaheim back in the game.
Yeah, so you're saying Golden Knights bad. I'm saying Anaheim good. They played fast. And
Okay.
They played hard. I mean, we've seen it with the Golden Knights team throughout the season. There's just something, and I keep on going back to this argument. There's something. And maybe Mark Stone changes this because he's a fiery guy. You saw how fiery he got when he got his first point.
Yeah.
But there's just something here. Marchie's one of those guys that gets fired up, where they go into that first intermission with a 1-0 lead, and I think just subconsciously it's like, okay, we're back. Like they think we got a lead, we're not playing a very good team, we got a goal on Gibson, we're back to our old ways. And I think it just in fits and starts, it comes and goes. Subconsciously, this team does not play with that edge that it needs to, and you saw it in that second period. You see it, You see it throughout. It's those scenarios where maybe they have a good period, they go into an intermission with a lead, and then they just come out flat, or it's they start a game flat because they won the last 2 in a row, or they had a big win the night before, and that's what I chalk that up to. It's just hopefully Stone can kind of change that I guess that tone going into a period.
Yeah, it's go ahead, Mac, but I'm going to come back to you on that.
Well, I think it's inconsistency because they allow game flow to dictate how they come out and play. Because if you look at the second period against Florida, they went into the first intermission down 3-1,
yep.
and they came out and completely
Exactly.
dominated that second period.
They scored,
with
I
the
think,
exception
in the
of
first 2.5 minutes?
no, it was a little later than that, but they had 3 or 4 great opportunities in the first 3 minutes of that period, and outside of about 45 seconds where Florida was able to push it down the other end and get a couple chances, they dominated the first 15 minutes of that period for the most part. So I think they're allowing too often game flow to dictate how they come out and start and or finish the period.
And that's, I come back to it. Now, I would say that over the past 10 games, they have at least 1 period, maybe 2, that there's a little bit of a slow start or even a slow end of the period. So we could argue that the Florida game in the first period, it's a 1-1 game. They go down 3-1 at the end of the period there, right? So I am concerned. I'm not concerned about a game in Anaheim in March, up 1-0 in the second period. I'm not really concerned about a game versus Florida in February because realistically those games don't mean anything because they're better than those teams. This team is probably 100% in my eyes in the playoffs, if not 99.9% just to be safe. But it does concern me that they have this sort of slow start, and they can't have a slow start against San Jose, Calgary, or any of the other 2 or 3 that we consider top teams in the West.
That Jets game, I mean, they got rolled over from start to finish of that game.
Yep.
And you point out, they scored 4 goals in 2 minutes and then a 5-on-3 and an empty netter. Okay, you're going to lose a hockey game that way.
Yeah.
But they were outworked for an overwhelming majority of that game. You're absolutely right. And it goes back to edge, right? And I know that these are abstract concepts, but maybe it's just that tone of the locker room, like I said, with Stone needs to shift, and as he gets comfortable, maybe he gets more vocal, or however you want to phrase it, they trust him a little bit more, or they feed off his energy. Again, that was genuine relief and excitement. We're on an assist, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff gets contagious, and I think eventually this edge is going to start to come back. Is this, whether it's you point to Arizona making a run to try to push them a little bit, I think all these things are kind of adding up to where at least they're going to come out a little bit more consistently with that edge.
I think edge is the perfect way to put it, because if you look at last season, they all had this commonality working together. Whether it was the shooting in Vegas that brought the entire city together and had the Knights as kind of this rallying cry, or it was the Golden Misfits moniker, where you have all of these players coming in from different areas that were kind of cast aside. Now let's fight as one unit and keep together on this same path. This season is just an NHL season. This is just a regular hockey season, and you go through lulls like this, and unfortunately they've gone through lulls individually at so many separate times that they haven't been able to come together with enough consistency. But now you're starting to ramp up for the playoffs.
I mean,
now you've got,
this is the time.
Right, and fortunately for them, they've stayed in playoff contention for the large part of the season. You know, they did enough to get themselves clear of the teams behind them. Couldn't stay with the teams in front of them, but they're in a solid playoff spot. Now with that edge, you go, look, here's our goal. We're getting down to the stretch run of this season. The playoffs are right in front of us. We know what we need to do. Perhaps that kind of readjusts that focus and gets them back on that same path.
Yeah, and I think that would be incredibly important because, again, when they start the playoffs, every team that they play is going to be really prepared for them. After Winnipeg won that game the other night, Coach Paul Maurice and their captain, Blake Wheeler, said, they got the best of us last year. We're coming at them every time we play. Nashville probably feels the same way. We know San Jose feels the same way. And they look really good. They played last night. I think they played Vancouver or whoever. But it was a good performance by them. These teams are now starting to realize, okay, Calgary, we're probably settled in the top. San Jose, now we're settled in the second. So there's a good chance, a really good chance that we'll play each other in that first round. Do you think playing in San Jose on the road to start the series, John, is a concern to you?
Oh man, I wanted to get to this rant and this tangent, and I'm just
Let's do
taking what you
Let
said.
it out.
Well, I'm taking what you said and going right turn. I'll tell you what, San Jose's going to have signage everywhere downtown. They're going to have the player.
Here we go. Yes, you're right.
Today, I'm
Are
launching
we on
the
this
campaign.
again, John?
But no, today is the official
Good.
launch of the campaign. City of Las Vegas, Clark County, City of Henderson, which we know will take care of it. City of Henderson, I give them props for last year. Let's start the orders now, guys. You've got a month and a half or so for the postseason. Get some banners, get the big-size jerseys, because you showed me San Jose, their downtown area. They got these huge banners everywhere celebrating the team in the playoffs, and they haven't won a Stanley Cup.
I know, and
Right?
by the way, it wasn't just a picture of Brent Burns and Joe Thornton. It was a picture of all of them. They all had their own flags and banners, and again, San Jose is sort of have this small kind of town, even though it's a very big city, but it's got that small feel because it's only got that one team. This sort of is that, it kind of has the same feel. So if you put up, a banner in Sun City or wherever you want, people are still going to recognize it and get excited for it. So yeah, get it out there. John, you start your campaign. Let's get it out there now.
Backlash against me for freaking
Spend
a little money.
Can we agree that maybe the Golden Knights and professional sports in general caught Vegas a little off guard last season? I mean, Vegas, and we've talked about this a lot, that it still has kind of a minor league feel to it as a city in sports, and it's learning to become a professional sports town. And when you finally get a team after forever, you finally get a professional franchise in, and in the first season that team makes a Stanley Cup final run. I mean, I think they just weren't quite ready for that kind of hysteria. They didn't understand what that was going to be. We had UNLV back in the 90s. There were, 350,000 people here. It was a completely different feel than what it is now.
But John's
I think they should be more prepared this season. Now, if they fail this season, then John, that it needs to be a revolution. It's a revolution that needs to start.
I'm fired up for you because
I don't get it. But I tweeted about it last year, and people were coming at me like your team's going to the Stanley Cup.
Celebrity chefs were coming at you, John.
Yeah.
John, I will, when we're in San Jose game 1, we'll make sure we take plenty of pictures.
Thank you.
Feed you some ammo. Yeah. But really, I mean, it just adds to the team. I mean, again, anytime I remember as a kid, the Bruins or the Celtics or the Red Sox would be in a championship, and, my mom would get a shirt. My little sister would get a shirt. Really, they could care less about the whole season, but all of a sudden the team is making a run, so they feel part of it.
Right.
That's why you put these signs up. Yeah, it might be, some people think it's a little tacky or overdone, but for the most part, it's trying to get everybody involved. And I think, last year everybody was involved in the Stanley Cup.
Everybody except the city council, apparently.
Again, I could keep on going here, but it's early, so I'm just launching my first shot now. So
Please.
I won't ramp up the rhetoric until the playoffs begin and I don't see anything. Then you will see literal fire come out of my Twitter account for sure.
There should
and
be
out of my mouth.
You have to see it.
Yeah.
It has to be out there.
There
this
should
year.
be a daily countdown of when the playoffs start,
We can
or
do
a
that.
playoff elimination for other teams. Something like
What's
that.
the first day? April 7th?
I think the last game,
It's
probably
somewhere around there.
like that. I think the last game of the season is April 4th, so then
Correct.
that probably makes sense. Okay, so you guys kind of brought it up before the break. I don't know if they're still recognized. I think we're getting back to that period where we were last year where, it's a good story, but they're not going to win, okay? So we get ESPN Power Rankings 15th, CBS Power Rankings 15th, NHL.com Power Rankings 13th, Sports Illustrated 15th, and I even went to a sports simulating site, Oddshark, and their Power Rankings have the Golden Knights at 20th. So
they're basically
nothing
saying
better
they're
than
the
13th.
They're the worst team of the playoff contending teams in the NHL. Is essentially what we're getting at.
This is post-trade deadline.
I mean, I think you can strongly disagree with that, right? This is a talented team. This is a more talented roster. We keep talking about it. It's a more talented roster than what they had last season. You look at last season's second line with Haula on there and Perron and Neal. Now you put Stastny in there with Pacioretty and Stone. Come on. I mean, right off the bat, that line is 1,000 times better than what it was last year.
Defensively, you lose scoring with Haula, Stastny switch, but you're right. I mean, you make up for it on the other end.
Right.
John, is this? I mean, is this the period? Is this the, it's a cute story. Second year. This is what I think it is.
Exactly. It's exactly it. Nobody believes in this team.
Yeah.
Outside of Las Vegas is the team itself again. It's all over again. And maybe it's not to the extent that it was at the start of last season and even after the team, was red hot coming out of the gates last season. This is the same in that, it's cute. It's Vegas.
Can they play that underdog role?
Oh, yeah, they're a playoff team. They're a playoff team.
Yeah,
But they're not a good playoff
Yeah,
team.
they're not a great playoff team.
And it's that all over again. And hopefully that storyline kind of comes out a little bit more.
I agree.
I think that'll be great.
I agree. I think that could be kind of your made-up bulletin board material.
There you go.
The one thing that irks me a little bit is if Mark Stone goes to any other team, they're the clear favorite. I mean, Tampa, okay, fine. Let's put Tampa as the clear favorite and then anybody
they're ridiculous.
below that. But if Nashville or Winnipeg or San Jose or Calgary ended up with Mark Stone, they're the number 2 team.
Yeah.
And Vegas gets the guy, and now they're 13th.
Maybe it just speaks to the inconsistency that this team has had this season.
Maybe.
I mean, they haven't, outside of that 20-game stretch or so, they haven't had a real dominating season like they did last year, where they just rolled through everybody. So, you play that underdog role. I think there's a few guys in that locker room that'd appreciate that, and they'd run with it.
Yeah.
Another rant I want to get on.
Oh,
I know,
there we go.
Please.
The two things I want to bring up were the sign, and can we not hand John Merrill the Norris Trophy?
Absolutely.
Everybody in the city is ready to hand him the Norris, and I just don't know why.
Okay.
Yeah, he's playing well.
He's the perfect fifth,
He's not
sixth,
the
seventh
top defenseman
No.
in the NHL.
No.
Okay,
Listen, no, you bring up a great
I think
point.
that's all I need to say.
I think we're all happy that John Merrill is having a great season. He's not a Norris Trophy winner, but if there was a best sixth or seventh man defense,
We'll come up with the
trophy in the break,
What the
and then we'll leave with
mustache.
that.
we'll do that. Sports Journalman guys filling in for Ken Bulkey. I'm Jason. We'll be right back after this SinBin Radio. What do they call like a six-man trophy?
Oh, the sixth man.
Yeah, they call it a sixth man in basketball.
It's not like a
Oh no, they might name it after somebody.
Johnson
You're right.
or
Yeah.
like a.
So who's the good? Who's the Derek England Award? You want to call it the Derek England Award?
Trying to Ron Hainsey maybe.
Like a really just mediocre defenseman.
Maybe.
You know what we need? We need like a 15-year journeyman guy
Well, that's like
who
Bob
never
Probert, but he
really
was the
did
forward.
anything, but
Bob Probert, yeah. England might
he
be
just
that
hung
guy.
around.
Okay, the Derek England Award.
Seriously, I mean,
Just hung around the NHL for 15 plus years. minimal contribution, but was always on a roster.
I mean,
Never a healthy scratch. Always found a way to be that sixth defenseman.
speaking of that, did Oscar Lindbergh score again? Let's see. I
I hope
yeah,
so.
yeah.
I hope so. I hope him and Brand Hunt go on to be Hall of Famers.
He's got. Nah, he just got those 1 point. Okay.
Good for him, though. First shift.
Oh, what's that? I didn't know it was
Yeah.
first shift. That's awesome. The Senators fans like, all right, it's the new stuff.
I'll tell you, man. I actually
put him at a 61.
I thought he had a lot more value than.
You think so?
Yeah. Hey,
But you got
he was
Stone
part of a
for him.
trade.
You got Stone
You know what I mean?
for him.
Like, I don't think you can put Carpenter in that deal and still get it.
Right.
Or I don't think you can put Period in there.
You're in the SinBin on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
All right, Jason SinBin.Vegas here with the Sports Adrenaline guys. You know them, of course, John and Matt. So, we talked about Winnipeg, we talked about Nashville, we talked about San Jose. Let's get to Calgary here. They're the ones that they didn't really make a big deal. They're still playing well. I mean, San Jose got close, and then Calgary went off and went, I think 7-1-2 over their last 10. So they're securing that number 1 spot. I think at this point we can lock them in there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where's your concern level with Calgary now? In your eyes, do you think that the San Jose Sharks got better than Calgary, and do you think that Vegas is a better team than Calgary, no matter what the standings are?
I think, I think Calgary, until proven otherwise, is the best team in the Pacific. I don't think you can take them off of that spot because this feels like a team that nobody saw coming, so we're not going to give them any due credit because you didn't really expect them to be where they're at, right? They can score. I think they got better defensively. So I think you just have to give credit where credit is due. Now, the positive for the Golden Knights is I think they don't have to see them in the first round because that's a confident team. Now, if the Knights can get past San Jose in that first round and they can get that confidence back, then I think you have the makings of a great series between those two teams. But Calgary is, in my opinion, the best team in the Pacific.
Yeah, and I can't dive too deep into it because the Golden Knights haven't played them since before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Right? So
remember, they had that 7-3 loss in Calgary,
Right.
and then they came to town, I think it was the day after Thanksgiving, and Golden Knights showed up.
Yeah, but how can you not forget that 7-2 game? I mean, it was like a freight train rolled through the Golden Knights with the way that they were
It was a wake-up, too, you could argue.
So I think we'll find out a lot more on the 6th and the 10th, right? They're playing them twice in 3 games here. So, I agree with Matt in the sense that they've been on the top of the Pacific since the start of the season, right? I mean,
they've been the most consistent team in the Pacific, too. And that... that sometimes is a tough thing to jump into first round of the playoffs, is to have to play a team with that kind of consistency level that's just rolling along. Once the playoffs start, things change. Series change teams. You get on rolls. You build confidence. Golden Knights, again, can get past San Jose and get rolling. Then I think that evens the playing field a little bit. But they're hot right now, and they're going to be the number 1 seed.
Calgary's won 7 in a row. The number that stares out to me is, or glares out to me, is plus 48 goal differential.
They can score, man.
And that's the second in the league behind only Tampa. So, again, very impressive what they've been doing this season. And the big numbers that connect Calgary and San Jose they're really good at home. 25-5 for both teams at home.
But Vegas can hang their hats on James Neal's numbers: 5 goals, 10 assists.
And Vegas playing.
That's all we're paying attention.
Vegas playing 500 hockey away from home.
Yep.
So I mean, it's not like they're bad. That's what you want to be as a playoff team. You want to be at least 500 on the road, and that's where they're at. So it's not like they can't go hold their own away from T-Mobile. I think for the Golden Knights, they have to find a way to be better at home than they have been because they've really struggled in the last few weeks at home, which was their calling card last season, was being so dominant at home.
I think really the bottom line, it comes down to this. In the playoffs, it's going to come down to goals. I think each team can defend each other. I think Vegas will always have the edge on goaltending-wise pretty much all the way through the West, I would say. But Calgary has 32 more goals this season, and San Jose has 35 more goals than the Golden Knights. That's a big difference there. That's a lot of goals.
That's why you bring in a Mark Stone.
Right. And actually it helps defensively as well. So I don't think they'll be able to score 3.5 a game, against Vegas in the playoffs, but these teams can certainly score.
Well, you're making an assumption that I don't want to make just yet about goaltending. Again, Marc-Andre Fleury, great game last night, but does he fade down the stretch or does he get enough rest? And I know we mentioned in a previous segment, right, he's got a 5-day break in between games here, but if this guy gets burnt out going into the postseason, I think you have absolutely no shot to do anything, right? So again, it's just doubling back to the point I made, making sure that you take care of Marc-Andre, get Malcolm Subban starts when you know you need to start him, and hopefully that means maximizing the number of starts he has here through the last 16 or 17 games in the season. But I wouldn't make, you're on paper, yes, but I wouldn't make that assumption that Vegas is going to have the goaltending edge if you have a Marc-Andre Fleury that's, let's say, this team's struggling and he's got to start every game just to keep this team in the playoffs.
I think you see Subban against Edmonton. It's a home game.
Okay.
I think you see him against Detroit. It's a home game because you have San Jose and Winnipeg in between, and there's a 2-day break between San Jose and Winnipeg, so Fleury can play both of those games easily.
Maybe you don't want him, though. Maybe you don't want him. Maybe you want to give him maybe a game that could be physical and strong and a tough game to play. Maybe you want to give Subban some adversity to get him in there.
I think that can go either way because I think if you get this team playing with their best guys on the ice, and that includes Fleury against two of the top teams in the West, and you can get past those two teams, especially on the road against San Jose.
That's what it is.
That's confidence builder, right? And that's a back-to-back too with Edmonton and San Jose. So. You're going to see Subban in one of those. I would say the home game is the more advantageous spot against a bad Oilers team.
I mean, again, we're talking about a very good hockey team. It's the end of the season. We're ramping up for the playoffs. And there's a good handful of teams in the mix in the West, and they're one of them. I mean, we're talking about, if not, top 3, top 5 for sure. And there's not much of a gap in between. When you look in the East, obviously, like we said, Tampa is just clearly ahead of everybody else. In the West, it's not. It's very clustered, and we could make an argument for 6 teams making a run in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to this team, you got the experience from last year. You got a great coach, and you got the goaltender. So, are you concerned about the defense in the playoffs?
Yes.
You are.
I think you only need and again, last season, but you only need to look at. I know Washington won the Stanley Cup final, but Vegas was atrocious defensively in that game. And you see, again, stretches here this season where, and I can't, I don't know what it is. I guess my hockey IQ isn't high enough, but you just see these funks with this team where defensively, odd man rushes. And it started, I think the first 2 or 3 minutes last night against Anaheim, didn't they? They had an odd man rush right on Marc-Andre, and he made a great save to start the game. That's happening way too often. I don't know who you point to, and like I said last segment, everybody wants to hand John Merrill the Norris Trophy. Derek England had a good game last night. You see consistently, but it seems like across the board, either good or bad when it comes to the back end.
So is that your main concern heading into the postseason, maybe locking down the defense?
I would say Marc-Andre getting his rest would be number one, and then the defense for sure would be right behind that.
I think you got to score. With teams like San Jose and Calgary, especially Calgary, that can score the way they do, I think you have to find your offensive groove, and you've got to be able to put up 3+ goals a game.
Yeah, if you can. You're not beating Winnipeg or Nashville. Definitely not Calgary scoring 2 goals a game.
No, it's not going to be the LA series from last season where you scored 3 goals in the first 2 games and come out of there with a 2-0 lead.
And again, this team should be able to score against Martin Jones, should be able to score against Mike Smith, and Connor Hellebuck. And even if they decide to go with UC Soros, they should be able to score against those teams. It's just a matter of how many they can get a game.
Really don't want to see Soros in there.
Yeah.
Man, that guy.
Well, Brossoit
outside of the last
Winnipeg,
game, jeez.
And he played really well as well. So it should be interesting to see who actually gets the starts to start these series for other teams. That's the one good thing about the Golden Knights is we all know. There's no way. We all know who the starter is throughout the entire series. Throughout the entire postseason.
Yep. Give him that rest. Give him those 5 days. Find a couple of days. That back-to-back, obviously, he'll get one. Don't overdo it, and let Fleury be fresh for the playoffs and see what happens.
All right, we always like to do some useless predictions for the week. Yep. So I'm gonna say they win tomorrow, and they're gonna go 2-1 this week.
2-1. So is that a Vancouver sweep this week with the Calgary loss, or really? Do you think? Man, I think they win tomorrow, and I think they ride that momentum into that Calgary game. I think you see a confident bunch coming out against Calgary on Wednesday night. I think they find a way to win.
I'll just give you a good prediction, not related to the games, but the slump is over. I want to say that.
Awesome.
The slump
is over.
Go. We have the Golden Knights here and here to stay this season.
All right, guys, appreciate you filling in. Jason Pothier, Ken Bulkey with SinBin Not Vegas. See you next week. I think I got it.
Shoot. Thanks, man.
No,
great
dude,
start,
awesome.
Bad Ed, but that's okay.
Dude.